So coming off the previous chapter, we saw Sukuna summon a new Shikigami by the name of Agito, which is actually a fusion of 3 Shikigami from the 10 Shadows, as we'll come to find out in this chapter. And that, along with Mahoraga, gives Sukuna now a 3v1 matchup against Gojo. And coming into this chapter, we see the spectators reacting, and Akotsu says that he's going to go out there, like, to help Gojo now. And Kashimo's like, don't interfere, at least you're not next, meaning that, like, you know, Kashimo has next because he called next first. Like when this fight started, he said that if Gojo were to lose, then he would step in next to take on Sukuna, because fighting Sukuna is Kashimo's like entire main motivation in this series. Like, he was promised this fight by Kenjaku 400 years ago. So he's not just going to let Akotsu jump in line. Then Hikari says that Gojo only allowed for them to enter if he himself got weaker than them. So that's interesting. I guess during the time skip between Gojo being unsealed and to him fighting Sukuna, at some point they did put in some contingencies that we just weren't aware of until now. So Gojo just wasn't going to like blindly sacrifice himself and just fight to the death meaninglessly. And I guess even currently, as fatigued and worn out as Gojo is, he's still not as weak, quote unquote, as Akotsu and Hikari are. Then Akotsu says that since Sukuna's domain expansion is disabled, you know, since they had that whole back and forth using it like 5 times, he can get in there and use Rika to fight against the 2 Shikigamis for Gojo, while Gojo just continues to fight Sukuna by himself. And that's a really interesting proposition there, because like, what would happen if that went down? Like, I'm sure Rika would destroy Agito, but could Akotsu defeat Mahoraga? And it's like, I don't know. I mean, maybe Akotsu and Rika going against Mahoraga would have an easier time, but this whole beginning of the chapter really gets my mind going with all the potential matchups here and how much fun it could be, just with speculation alone. You know, like Kashimo versus Akotsu, or Hikari versus Akotsu, or any of them versus Maki. And speaking of her, she comes in and she says, you know, if anyone's going, it's me. Don't forget your role, talking to Kashimo. Like, if you're defeated, some of our insurance will be gone. And she's referring to Kashimo's curse technique, which apparently he can only use once. And it's like so powerful that it can probably take out Sukuna, which Kashimo is essentially holding it for. And Maki saying that she wants to come in here goes back to what I was saying. It's like, what about Maki versus Mahoraga? Could she just cut his soul with the quickness and take him out? Or would he adapt to that? Would he adapt to his soul being cut? I guess, right? If he can adapt to any and all phenomena. But anyway, Yuji steps in and he's like, Akotsu, you know, go for it. We need this. And I love that Yuji says this, because it makes sense. It's like, yeah, this is the point where we should all jump in and, you know, gang up on Sukuna and just take him down. Like, the villains are outnumbered at this point. And I just appreciate that Yuji is acknowledging that and just taking the pragmatic approach here, because, you know, in other series, they would be like, no, we have to let them fight each other by themselves. When a lot of the issues in like multiple series, you know, in Battle Shonen or just battle manga in general, could have been solved if they all just ganged up on the villain. But of course, it would just be too easy if we did that. And Kusakabe steps in and he's like, you know, you guys don't understand anything. Because then Kusakabe puts out other options of maybe they're able to handle Kenjaku, and I think all of them teaming up could easily take down Kenjaku. Don't get me wrong, he's pretty powerful, but not strong enough to fight against all of the spectators here. Kusakabe also says that Sukuna must have some kind of trump card that he's preserving, and if they go out, he might use it. So I do appreciate the way that Gege is handling this here. He is giving like a legitimate excuse as to why they shouldn't all gang up on Sukuna. Kusakabe's like, you know, what if Sukuna has this trump card? And it is very possible, but at least an explanation is being given here. But first, let's talk about the sponsor of this video, Hofsco. Hofsco strives to make the best and reliable electric bikes for bike lovers, helping all cyclists live an active, healthy, and sustainable lifestyle. Their goal is to build a long-lasting brand, get more people on bikes to experience the e-bike smile, and begin an incredible adventure journey. And they're not lying about the e-bike smile, because guys, this is by far one of the best things I've ever received in my life, because this thing is truly incredible and has completely changed my life
for the better. Now, I live in the inner city, and since I became a content creator full-time a couple years ago, I no longer saw the need for a car, and I got rid of it, which was like a huge burden off my shoulders. I didn't have to worry about parking, maintenance, gas, insurance. I don't think I've driven a car in like the last 3 years, and I was kind of just taking rideshare apps to get to long distances, and aside from that, I'd of course be walking everywhere in between. But I don't have to worry about that ever again now that I have the Hovsco Hov City step-through cruiser electric bike. Now, of course, this thing looks incredibly aesthetic. Just taking this out for a 15-minute stroll today, I had people constantly glancing at it. It's a class 2, but can be class 3 unlocked via the Hovsco app, which is super simple to use. It has a Shimano 7-speed shifter, and speaking of the motor, it has a 500-watt brushless gear hub motor, and goes up to speeds of 28 miles per hour. This thing is incredibly fast, and you can just tap on the throttle, and you're pretty much cruising. You don't even have to pedal. Like, check this out. It was so much fun doing this. It also has a 60-mile range battery, along with a flashlight and super powerful brakes for when you really need them. And since I got my Hovsco bike a few months ago, my girlfriend has also gotten one, and it just made her life so much easier. Driving and parking isn't the easiest in our city, especially as a college student, so now she doesn't really have to worry about that stuff. Also, now that we both have bikes, we can go on rides together, which is like a fun new way to get a workout since we didn't have these before. So guys, if you're interested in completely changing your lives for the better and just adding pure fun to your life, check out my link in the description and make sure you use code BIGZ for $100 off your purchase. That's right, $100 off using code Big Z.
And this also could be foreshadowing, like maybe he really does have a trump card. I mean, I guess he does, right? There's obviously things that he hasn't shown against Gojo that we know that he has, namely the fire arrow. And also he has, some kind of scheme to get his original body back too, which we're for sure going to see at some point. Along with the full reveal of whatever his curse technique is and all of the abilities within it, or whatever he can do, whether it's a curse technique or some kind of proprietary jujutsu ability that he developed. But they ultimately decide on, hey, it's just better if we just let Gojo go about it and just take him down, and then we could just deal with everything after that. And they punctuate it with, it would be lame to interfere with it. And at this point, I kind of agree with that, at least just for entertainment's sake. But for the sake of pragmatism, for sure, it could have been handled a little better, but it's fine. But we come back to Gojo taking on the 2 Shikigami, and he's having somewhat of an easy time with them. I think he lands the Black Flash on Agito, but maybe he doesn't, because if he did, he surely would have killed it maybe, but I don't know. Maybe it's just showing that he's fatigued and regressed so much that not even a Black Flash is really doing that much. Not really sure. Maybe it's just a similar art style. But anyway, Gojo winds up ripping off Agito's snake tail. And he says that Agito is what happens when Nu then inherited the Great Serpent, which Sukuna also fought in the past, back in his first encounter with Megumi, Morn Tiger, and Round Deer. So I don't think we knew this in the previous chapter, right? Because Sukuna said Nu and totality, right? Unless that was a mistranslation or I'm reading it wrong. But now it turns out that it's Nu with the Great Serpent and Morn Tiger. We've never heard of that before, as far as I know. And I think that completes the 10 Shadows. Like, that's the final one that we didn't know about. And he also says that because of Round Deer, it has the ability to heal itself, because that was like Round Deer's thing. It had positive curse energy and could imbue reverse curse technique on the user, which was like a great utility. I really enjoyed that aspect of Sukuna's fight against Yorozu. But it gives Agito the ability to regenerate, of course, too. And while it's not adapted to Limitless like Maharaga, it still essentially needs to be taken out in one big blast, similar to Maharaga. So that's what Gojo aims to do here, after easily evading the strikes of both Maharaga and Agito here, somewhat playing with them. Really showing that Gojo isn't entirely reliant on Limitless. Like, he's just a great sorcerer, or just a physical specimen in general. Like, he could just get around with cursed energy reinforcement. I mean, the 6 eyes also helps with that too. It's not like Maharaga is adapting to the 6 eyes. Although that would be crazy if he could somehow figure out how to do that. But we get an inner monologue from Sukuna while Gojo's doing this, and he essentially says that he was able to survive the initial purple that Gojo shot at the beginning of the fight, but now that he's regressed so much and become so weakened, throughout this fight, that if he were to take another purple at 100%, it would take him out for sure. So he essentially has to really avoid that. Like, he can't let Gojo use purple, because he knows that that's all that Gojo has left. And we also found out in the previous chapter that Gojo pretty much intends to use purple again, because it's his last shot at taking down Mahoraga and Sukuna in possibly like a 2 birds 1 stone scenario. At least if he takes down Mahoraga, he has a much better chance of taking down Sukuna at that point. Then Sukuna like starts cheering on / berating Mahoraga here, and he's like, you know, how long are you gonna have me waiting? It's like, you're my shadow, not Megumi's. It's like, show me what you got. And then we see like Mahoraga's like, I don't know, it evokes some kind of emotion in Mahoraga, and his Dharma Chakra wheel spins, indicating that it adapted or learned, possibly, because he takes off Gojo's arm instantly, but then we also see that he cut cleanly through the buildings behind them. And then Kusakabe says Mahoraga can use his slashes, I guess implying Sukuna, right? Meaning that, did Mahoraga learn cleave from Sukuna? And I guess that seems to be the implication here, right? Which is really cool. It's like, not only can Mahoraga adapt to his opponent and learn how to adapt to it, I suppose you could say, but now it can also learn from its master, which I guess makes sense, right? It can go both ways, but that's just the ultimate mastery of the 10 Shadows, like having Mahoraga learn your abilities. Now, I don't know if that's fully what's going on here, but come on, considering what Kusakabe is saying and the way that it's depicted, taking off Gojo's arm and going through the building, I guess that's what it means. But since Gojo has been so fatigued throughout this battle, the same way that Sukuna has, you know, his healing has slowed down, as indicated by Shoko. So losing an arm is really bad at this point. And he starts to get beaten down by Sukuna and the Shikigamis. But then he suddenly just snaps, and he throws a maximum output blue at Agito, and it like shoots out of the building and goes into the sky, and it just destroys him completely. Like an instant counter turnaround knockout strike from Gojo here. Pretty awesome sequence. This is essentially what he was waiting for, and he was willing to take a shot from Agito straight on his head just to give Agito the killing blow. And in the final panel, we see that Gojo's arm is healing. So I suppose in the next chapter, he will go in completely healed at this point, you know, with his arm back. But then the narrator says 41 seconds later, again, Gojo Satoru's Hollow Technique Purple will leave a scar in Shinjuku. So in the spoilers, I was a little thrown off by this. I thought we were seeing it here, but no, what we're actually seeing going off of the skyscraper is just the maximum output blue, I'm pretty sure, destroying Agito. We haven't seen the purple yet, but the purple is going to be so big, I guess, that it's going to leave, like it says, a scar in Shinjuku, like just tearing up blocks and blocks, maybe miles. And I guess this confirms that Gojo is definitely going to hit Sukuna with a hollow purple, or Mahoraga at least, or he's just going to for sure fire it off, meaning that Sukuna fails in preventing him from doing it. And how significant is this going to be? I guess it's going to be the most significant thing that Gojo does, because it says the battle enters its climax, meaning that the next chapter is the final chapter of Gojo versus Sukuna, and we're going to get a winner in that chapter. And it kind of has to be Sukuna at this point. Now, I hope that Gojo doesn't die. I don't want that. It would be cool if Gojo just loses, but then still, you know, is alive. I don't know if he's nerfed or he loses his curse technique or something. I don't know. But if he stays alive, that's obviously what we want. But we also have to accept that there's a very real chance he could die. Maybe not in the next chapter, but in the next couple chapters, it's very possible. But he's going to go out with a bang regardless. Or there's just like a massive twist and somehow Gojo wins, and then, I don't know, Sukuna runs away. No, I think we're too late in the game for that. I do think that they're going to have a stretch of chapters where they go to like their own corners, you know what I mean? Like, we need to have a break, I guess. Unless Gege just plans to go straight into everyone fighting Sukuna, and then that fight just rides out the rest of the series. But there's still a lot of unfinished business with a few other things. And Kenjaku still needs to make that giant Kenjaku Japanese population curse thing, right? That still is going to happen. So yeah, we still got a lot of things to go over, but let me know what you think about this chapter in the comments, guys. And if you liked the video, please give it a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.